Today we're doing a bit of work on a Nissan Skyline 1989 model, and what's happening, he's got 4-speed RE4R01A transmission in it, struggling to get into top gear or overdrive, and also when it does get in, it's jumping in and out of third to overdrive or third to fourth, back to third to fourth. So we've just checked all the basics, checked the fluid level, taken it for a run. We'll just suck the fluid out of it. Makes it a little less messy there. Now's a good time to just double check, make sure there are no oil leaks or anything like that. And the way you tell if there's a flow of oil there, it'll actually clean a little area wherever it's leaking. You can see it's been weeping oil here somewhere, but it doesn't appear to have any obvious oil leaks. We've got the pan off, got the filter off, and now we're just going to take the valve body out. The only solenoid that you can see underneath here is the torque converter clutch solenoid, and there are 4 solenoids on top of the valve body. Manufacturer's diagram of which bolts are on the valve body and need to be removed to lower the valve body. And just for reference, here's the êADG manual, and it shows you the position of the valve body bolts and the different lengths. Loosen all the bolts as per that diagram, and the way you test it, you can see if I wriggle that valve body up and down, you can see which bolts are not moving up with the valve body. And now we'll just take those bolts out. Well, first we'll unclip these electrical connectors and then we can drop it down. Nice one. Now, as you pull them down, you'll notice we've got these accumulator springs. Now the accumulator springs, you've got the one, that one's the front one, then you've got the big one in the middle, and the medium sized heavy spring at the rear. Now while you've got the valve body off, you can do an air pressure test on the clutch packs. You can see this one's actually been sitting, must have been sitting for a while, and it's got a fair bit of surface rust on there. That's quite heavy rust, not surface rust, that's actual rust. So we've got the valve body out, and you can see there's quite a bit of fine metal accumulated there on the top of the valve body. There's the solenoid block. So we've got the overrun solenoid, solenoid A, solenoid B, and the pressure control solenoid. And this one on the bottom side of the valve body, that one's the torque converter clutch solenoid. And we've also got a little temperature sensor here as well. The gasket got stuck on the case there when we were taking it out, so we're going to have to actually open this one up and replace that gasket, especially there. I'm not sure what that accumulator does there, but you're going to definitely lose a little bit of pressure if you don't replace that. So be aware of that. Always a good idea to check the gasket that it hasn't got a split or a crack or a broken bit out of it. So I've undone the bolts off the solenoid block, and that just comes away like that. Another bolt on that bracket. There it is there. Now I'm just going to replace that gasket there. Okay, valve body's nice and clean. Check the valves. Make sure you put all the check balls. There are 9 check balls in these. And I like to smear transmission fluid on the gasket just so it doesn't stick to the valve body before you put it on. Make sure you do both sides. Now we can put the lower half on there and bolt it up. One little trick I've learnt, sometimes these valve body gaskets will be larger than the holes. What you can do is just put it in the microwave for a minute. Don't overcook it, you'll burn it, but it will take the moisture out of it and contract it a little bit, especially if the bolt holes and the port holes aren't lined up. The lower half's back on. Now I can just flip it over and we can put our new solenoid pack in. Now these 2 bolts, one there and one opposite side, they actually align everything. So make sure you keep everything loose until you get these in, and then it should align all the holes, bolts, holes and whatever else. You don't just force it in, just wiggle those seals in. Like that. Make sure your earth strap's bolted down. And also don't forget to line up the selector when you're putting it in. I've tightened up or torqued up the top part of the valve body because we can't get access to the bolts from underneath. Now you want to make sure that the manual shaft is aligned with this. And I'm lucky I've got a helper here. I'll be able to tuck those accumulator springs in there while I'm getting the valve body up. It's very difficult to do, especially on your own, because you've got to align it up evenly. Alright, just put it up into place, position. You lined that up. Yep, just lower it down. I've just got to put those springs up. Just sort of twist it like that. You're holding it?
Yeah.
Just got to go down evenly. Like that, not that much. I'm not moving around because the spring will fall.
Yeah, holding it.
Righto, you can just line up that shaft. I've got the springs in.
Yeah.
That's it. You're holding it?
Yeah. Put a little more salt.
Okay. Now I've marked let it loose a bit.
Drop it?
Don't drop it. Just
No, but like slowly.
just let it down. Yep. There we go. Now that selector might fall out of place until we get it up. You can see I've also marked where all the longer bolts go. This makes it a little bit easier when you're getting it up. Okay, we've got all the bolts up. I've got our little drill, but I've got the clutch on loose. I don't want to tension it up with this. We're going to do it with the tension wrench. Filter goes on that one. Tighten that one up afterwards. And we just torque it up with tension wrench as per manufacturer's tension specs. Okay, now we can put the clips back in. got these little clips. They just go over the top of the connector there. And we're just going to remove this cover just so we can clean any muck out of it that might have accumulated. Pull that out. And you can see why it's a good idea to remove that cover, just to wash out or clean out all that muck that's accumulated in there. So the cover and that top piston, or bottom piston actually, how it sits, nice and clean. And it's a good idea to just smear a bit of oil on there when you're putting it in. That O-ring doesn't look too bad. Now you can see the snorkel on the filter on these is pretty short, and also the different filters have different numbers of dimples in them. So it's a good idea to compare it, and also don't forget to put your O-ring on the new filter there. You can see how much muck was on that magnet. So the magnet's thoroughly covered. You can see how much fine metal's there, and that wouldn't have been working anymore, so all that muck would have been attracted to the solenoids. One thing, it contaminates the solenoid. Two, it's suspended in the transmission fluid, and it's almost like liquid sandpaper, if you can imagine that floating through the rest of the transmission. So make sure you actually remove the pan, clean the magnet, clean the pan, add magnets if you can, replace the filter, instead of just changing the oil in a transmission service. Filter's back on, everything's back in. Just make sure all these little clips are holding the cables nice and snug. All the clips are in. Double check your work. Make sure your cover, if you've removed the cover there, that you've nipped it back up. We're going to leave the magnet up on that little bump there, just so it can work top and bottom. More of the magnet exposed to the fluid will keep it much cleaner. And we're going to add a neodymium magnet to it as well. Just make sure that it's not in the way of anything. Good idea to test it before you put it all back up. And we'll just straighten out this pan a little bit as well. All back together, pan's back on, new gasket. While you've got it up, now's a good time to check your universal joints, centre bearing there and the rubber. He's got a bit of a hole in his muffler there. Check all your shocks, rubbers. Good idea to check the diff oil level. And anything else that might be out of the ordinary. You can see he's got a bit of an oil leak over here on that boot. And also a good idea to check those boots that they're not torn or perished. So we're going to put some Tritec full synthetic multi-fluid in this now. There we go, back from a road test. It's not jumping in and out of gear. I've had it warmed right up. We did a couple of stall tests, and that'll warm the fluid temperature right up. And also what I've noticed now, whenever you select the power shift button, it'll even select in and out even up to 50 or above 50 kilometers an hour. There is a bit of a firm 1-2 shift, and the lock-up, well, 3 to 4 is very soft, and the lock-up you can barely feel it, but you can see it on the tacho there. It'll just drop down in revs by about 2 to 300 revs. Anyway, I hope that's helped. It is a complicated valve body to get off because of all the bolts and brackets and things, but you can do it if you're patient. And good idea to take photos of what you're doing just as a reference how to put things back. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Leave any comments or questions in the section below. And don't forget to throw us a beer if any of this information helps or saves you a few dollars. The link's in the bottom there. Anyway, thank you for watching.